Good evening, everyone. My name is Deanne Hurley, and I'm the Vice President for Enrollment Management and Student Affairs at Ursuline College in Pepper Pike, Ohio. And thank you all for being here with me tonight. I am tasked with talking to you about life skills to acquire before graduation. So advice that I can give you to assist your high school students in getting prepared for college while they're still at home with you. Besides having 30 years in higher ed and being on the receiving end of your students coming into school, I'm also the mother of 2 college students and a high school senior. So we are going through our 3rd college search process. So how many of you, do any of you have children who are currently in college? Okay, good. I've got a handful, so you can help me with giving best advice to these parents. I have a few points that I want to share with you. The best words of wisdom that collectively my college has come up with, and these are things that we share with our parents who are coming in for academic orientations during our summer and spring before their students start in the fall. And just some things to think about. You may already be doing these things, but if not, I'm letting you know now that these are things that would be helpful for you and for them to have in place. And the first is time management. Students have a variety of organizational patterns and time management skills. And if you have a student that you are saying, have you done your homework? Have you done your homework? Get this, like sit down and do this. My advice to you is going to be to back off a little bit, because no one is there to do that for your student in college. So what we started doing with our sons in junior high was to try to get them acclimated to a time that worked best for them with their sports and with their academic schedules, and said, this is yours. You need to learn to manage your time. I can't babysit you to say, turn this in, let me review this. My husband and I made ourselves available to our students to say, if you need help, absolutely, but you need to be able to try to schedule yourself in your time and get used to this, because in college, I don't want you to be that parent who several years ago, I had a call saying, I'm also the dean of students, had a call from a mom who wanted me to go wake up her daughter to make sure she got to class. And parents are also sometimes surprised that they ask when curfew is. And for those of you who have gone to school or have other students in school, you'll know that they manage their time themselves. And so they're coming and going. And if they learn to do that in high school, and sometimes it's tough, they may be, they may not be on the same schedule you would be for, I have 3 sons, and all 3 are procrastinators. But they've learned, and they've actually done way better with their time in college than they have in high school. And so I know it's hard to take a step back, but the good thing about that is that you can still kind of coach from the sidelines, and because you're not going to be there with them at college. So financial savvy. Now, this is something that we talk to parents about because students need to be able to manage their money, probably with your help. A lot of students work a work-study job in college, or they work during the summers or maybe the holidays, and some students have to work to put themselves through school. But one of the things that we suggest is that while your student is still in high school, if they don't have a checking account or a debit or credit account, that you get them one so that you can supervise and make sure they're managing it correctly. Students who don't have money, and my favorite story is a good friend of mine told her son, she said, I'm going to give you money at each quarter that you will manage, and he blew through his quarter money within the first couple of weeks of school with the freedom to buy pizzas and go out to eat and go shopping. And so that was a lesson for both of them. But I think that if you can work with them to understand how they can manage their money, if your student is living on campus, most likely they're going to be on a food plan. And I will tell you that every single school in the area will work, and anywhere in the United States will work with your student if they have a schedule. Don't let them say, oh, we can't get food, I've got a class during this time, or I've got athletics. Every school will work with your student to provide food, so they don't need lots of money to buy pizza and every night. So I hope that you think about that. For a practical piece, laundry. Some of you may be fortunate enough to have children who do laundry, and I taught all of my boys how to do laundry early on, but I still ended up doing most of it. But I did teach them when they went to college what they needed to do and how to sort and just the practicality and reality of it. And I would have kids who would toss down a pair of jeans down the laundry after wearing them one time, and I kept telling them that you could wear jeans a couple of times, especially if you weren't sweating or getting dirty. And that didn't really hit home till they had to do laundry, and now they say, oh no, we can go a little bit more. One of my sons said, he goes, well, his piece was that he pretended not to do laundry, how to do laundry, so a cute girl would teach him how to do laundry in college, and that did work well for him. But my other piece of advice are color catchers. I don't know if you use those at your house, but they do keep running and bleeding. You toss them in a load. My kids call them dude loads. They do not sort. They're going to put reds in with their whites and their darks and their mediums. Drives me crazy, but at least they're doing their own laundry. But the color catchers will keep things from bleeding, and they really do work. So that's just a practical piece. Problem solving and self-advocacy. I think all of us want the best for our children, and we're very used to helping them, and especially in high school and junior high and all through, talking to teachers and talking to whomever you need to get what you need for your child. And once your child gets to college, they really need to be a self-advocate, and you need to be able to coach your student so I'm not saying don't help your student, but I'm saying you should not be the one necessarily calling the school. You should be coaching your student on who they can talk to at the school. So whether that be, and they will have problems at school for a variety of reasons. It could be roommate drama. It might be an issue with a grade in class, and there are policies and procedures that all schools have and use, and you need to be able to coach your child from there. And I will tell you that as someone who's both a parent and a college administrator, that I do appreciate it when parents will call saying, I don't know who they should call, I don't want to do it for them, but I want to know who I can, where should I go, let me know so that I can let them know. And we are more than happy to provide it. And we will tell the parent that if they need someone to go with them or to talk with a teacher, it can be very scary, that whole power struggle thing. But your schools are there to help you. And again, you're coaching your child rather than doing it for them sets them up for good practice in the workplace and just for life. For majors, one of the things that we tell people at Ursuline, we have a very strong nursing program, and people get very excited when their kids want to be a nurse, and they're like, oh, my kid's going to be a nurse. And we start students in clinicals very early, their freshman year, and that's when students find out that they don't like dealing with sick people, or they don't like blood, and they don't want to be a nursing major anymore. And it's usually harder for parents than for students when they change their mind, when somebody wants to be a doctor or a lawyer or something. And we tell parents, we tell students, don't come to school to be something. You're going to acquire the skills to be able to help you do and be successful in whatever field you go into. And those skills will help you get the first job and the second job and the third job. So you're going to be learning skills about analyzing and synthesizing, good communication skills, whatever those are, and for every school will have those. And just to be supportive, if your student who you thought was going to be an engineer wants to be an art major, I think that the good part is you want them to find their passion. And I love when students don't know what they want because they feel feel that they should, because everybody asks, like, where are you going to college and what's your major? And it's very stressful for those kids who don't know what their major is going to be. But a school with a good core curriculum or a liberal arts background, they're going to be taking a lot of different things, and they will fall into something that they love and enjoy, and something that they may never have thought of before. So don't worry about that. The other advice that I have for you with your students, and it depends on both their learning style and the high school that they went to. Some students thrive in very large classes, some in very small that are interactive. And you know, my kids went to a school, a high school that had a very small faculty staff ratio, 14-1. And I really thought, especially with my first one, that he loved the environment there, and I thought, oh, he's going to go to a small private liberal arts school. And I was very surprised when he said, you know, I just kind of want to be a face in a crowd. I want a bigger school. And that ended up being a good decision for him. But we had all of our kids go and sit in classrooms for a day. And so, you know, you do the college visits, and you do the tours, and you'll talk to students. And really, the students and the student ambassadors that are doing the tours are where you and your students are going to get the best information. But it's also helpful, once your student has narrowed the search, if they haven't sat in on a classroom at that college, to allow them to do that. We flew our son to Boston he was debating between two schools. One in Boston and one right here in our backyard, Case Western Reserve University. And he wanted to do chemistry, and he'd already researched. He didn't care. He was my first student, loved every school we looked at. I love it here. I could go here. I love it here. I could go here. I love it here. I could go here. My second son wanted chemistry, and he researched and looked at faculty departments and research. His search was very different. And he didn't care where the school was. He didn't care how big, small, rural, urban. He didn't care. He cared about the chemistry department and how he would be taught. And so when we sent him to sit in on classes for a day, and then we brought him back to Cleveland and sent him to Case for a day, he ended up deciding Case. Now, I think Boston really appealed to him, and quite frankly, I was very sad to see my weekends in New England go away for Parents' Weekend. But it's turned out to be the best decision. He said it came down to how they taught the classes. And even though the classes were larger at Case, how they taught them was how he felt was going to help him the best. So communication. Now, this is a very interesting one, especially now. Like, I've been in higher ed for 30 years, and I've talked with parents, and sometimes I felt like a fake. Like, now that I have kids in college, I think back, like, 30 years ago when I was talking to parents, I really didn't know what I was talking about. But having kids and having students now, you know, go through, it's so interesting now because everybody's so connected with cell phones and with social media. You know, I follow, two of my kids will let me follow them on Twitter, one doesn't. But when they went to college, with my oldest, I said, I want to hear from you once a week. He goes, I'll text. I said, I want to hear your voice. He's like, once every 2 weeks. I'm like, once a week. And we set up a time and date and waited for him to call. And it's you know, I was so excited to hear from him. It was my first one, and I wanted more contact. And my husband and I had said, we need, you know, this advice had come from other parents, and we had seen it at the schools. He also works at a school. And we said, you know, the student really needs to drive that. There's nothing wrong with saying once a week, check in. I want to make sure you're alive and find out how you're doing. But you shouldn't be the one texting every day saying, how was your class? How'd you do on that test? What are you doing tonight? You need to let them, it's really, if you don't hear from them, it's usually a good sign. It means they're happy and busy and doing things. Some of you will have the opposite problem, and I'll be really honest. My goddaughter went away to Northwestern and was very homesick, and she was calling several times a day and wanting to Skype, and they needed to kind of wean her to, you know, to say, you know what, you're doing great, let's do, you know, we'll call you in 2 days, you know, to try to move it, you know, to give her a little bit of time. So allow your student to kind of take the lead with how often you to be in touch with them. ADA and disabilities. One of the things that I want to share with you, and this may not be applicable to any of you, but if your student has a disability, a learning or physical disability, or has ever been diagnosed with one, it would be in your best interest to make connections with the college, with their whatever they call it. At Ursuline, it's the Student Success Center, but some students have an ADA office. And what the office will do, and a couple of things, because what we also see is that high school students who are on meds or who needed to check in with appointments, they kind of want to start fresh at college. They don't want people to know that they have a disability. They don't want, they've managed it and may want to try to go without meds or go without some individual tutoring. And what we tell the parents and students is check in with the office with your paperwork. You don't have to use it. But if you have it, then it's there and in place. Because here's the thing at a college. If your student has like ADHD and has whatever accommodations they could be. It could be extra long test taking. It could be testing alone in a quiet area. It could be for students with seizures, allowing a couple of days after they recover to make up tests. That normally there's boundaries around when you can do it. With an ADA excuse, you're allowed to make it up. And when they work with the office, they do have to present the papers to their faculty to sign off on to get the accommodations, but they don't have to tell what the accommodations are for to the faculty members, what their issues are. It's just that they need these accommodations. And so just keep that in the back of your mind, and note it if your student does have a disability to please connect with the office at the college that they're looking at. At Ursuline, we provide there's a machine that reads books to people who can't focus. We provide note takers for people. We have special testing rooms for quiet. So again, there's a variety of things that schools will and can do to accommodate your needs. FERPA, do any of you know what that is? Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. It's like HIPAA for hospitals except for colleges. And what FERPA says, the government says when your child is 18, they're an adult, and the schools cannot share information with you, okay, except without a written release. And what I tell parents, because they kind of freak out at times when they hear that, so I don't, this is a national, a federal rule or regulation, is this, that schools cannot share things with you without your student's permission. And I hope, and this is what I tell parents, and that I hope that you will have a good enough relationship with your student that in the moment, for whatever's going on, they will give permission if you need to talk to somebody on the campus. And I will also tell you as a college official that if there was something, because most of the time parents are very concerned, like what happens if something happens to my child and nobody tells me. I tell parents, if your child ends up in the hospital, you will be getting a call from me. I'm calling you because that is the right thing to do to let you know. But the other piece of it is, if you were worried about your child, if your child is homesick, if your child, if you're trying to coach them to go talk with so-and-so, or every year we have probably the most homesick student I have. Now I'm in Pepper Pike on Lander Road, right between Mayfield and Fairmont. I had a student from Mayfield Village who was homesick, lived on campus, and was the most homesick I have ever seen. And the mother would say, and she presented so well, like in the halls, she was like going to programs, and she seemed to be eating with people and doing well. And her mom called to say, I'm glad she's doing well, but she is just sobbing herself to sleep at night. She's so homesick, she's in her room. And, I don't want, I just want you to know this. And that's a good thing, because while we can't share information back, we absolutely follow up and check. Like if someone's worried that their student is stressed, if someone's worried that they're having a problem with their boyfriend or girlfriend, if they're worried that they're not eating or not going to class, we can't tell you that information without your children's permission, but we absolutely follow up and we'll check, through the RAs or through the coaches or through the faculty members to make sure that we're reaching out to your student and catching them. Our job is, you have been your supported safety net for your child for all of these years, but our job is to help you with that. Okay, I think this is my last piece of advice. It is. My last piece of advice is really more information for you to share with your students, so that this information has been for you to help your student, but this is another piece for you to help your student. Harvard did a study years ago on what makes a student successful. They were trying to research to see, what made a student the most successful. And when the study came out, people were like, it's Harvard. Like, everybody who goes there is successful. So they have since replicated that study at a variety of schools, and they found the same three things held true: that the students who were the most successful academically in school and to be able to stay through graduation had three things in common. The three things are: have one person that the student connects with at the college that they could go to if they had help or questions. It could be someone in the library, it could be a teacher, it could be a staff member, but just one person that they feel that they could go to. The second is to be involved in one thing at the college. It doesn't matter if it was in athletics, if it was a student organization that was a fun one, or one that was the college newspaper, an academic piece, or on a college committee. But students who were involved with one thing tended to have a better experience, and it allowed them to manage their time better. And I don't know if you've had this experience with yourself. My boys play baseball and basketball, and they are more organized in their season than out of it, because they have to be. And the third thing is studying groups. And this is very interesting, because a lot of students don't like to study in groups, like they're the smartest one, or they get aggravated with everybody else. But what they found is, even just studying with one other person, like when you quiz someone, you learn the information as they learn it. If you've ever done flashcards with your kids or helped study for a test, and that's the same thing. If they can even work with one other person or a small group, that those students tended to both do better and enjoy school more. So those are my tips for helping you launch your students for college. And they ask that I leave time so you could ask questions. And if we have some parents who currently have students in college, I would love for you to offer your own pieces of advice that you found helpful. Yes.
On the last piece you went over, doing one thing at school, you don't mean just one thing, you mean something.
Something, yes. They can do more than one thing, but just
for studies, do
right.
Something else.
Absolutely. Because it is a holistic piece. You want them to do something just for socializing or for stress relief. Yeah. And just to be involved, because students who are involved with their colleges tend to have a better college experience. So. Any other words of advice? I have some teary eyes. It is very exciting. Your kids will be so ready. And for those of you who have, you will see, I think God works in mysterious ways. If your student isn't already driving you crazy, by the senior year and spring, you're ready to kill them. Because, you're like, thank God they're going to college. But it is a wonderful experience, and especially with the first one, you're going to learn so much. And the only other piece of advice I can tell you is on college visits. Having gone through with nieces and nephews, with my goddaughters, my own sons, and just seeing students here, that it very much is a fit. That students will say, "This is where I feel at home." One of my colleagues, her daughter had always wanted to go to Smith. She actually went here to HB and thought she wanted to go to Smith. It was a women's college, very prestigious. And so they went on a trip up there. They drove up there. She wouldn't get out of the car. She goes, "I don't like it here." Her parents took the tour. The daughter stayed in the car. And she refused to get out of the car. And so they did more college visits. And when she ended up at Oberlin, and when they got there, she said, didn't get out of the car. She goes, "This is it. This is where I'm going." So I just say that. So don't be expecting them to be able to contrast and compare. It's not going to be that deep. Some students will be able to do that, but it really is going to be where they feel the best or most at home. Yes.
There's one thing that I've been through this a couple times. Not that I'm, the most versed at it, but something that we learned along the way is that picking college is not a life sentence.
Yes.
And sometimes they go to the wrong spot and they need to move. And so it's not necessarily all laid out, and the
Right.
evidence is not perfectly cleared in the process. And they may start out with criteria that are so bound and determined to follow that they, along the way, realize that's not what's important to them. Because they're gonna change and they're
Right.
gonna see things. And so as a part of that, our middle daughter went to a school and it was just not the right fit. And so she moved, and it worked out even better.
Right.
So it is possible, and don't feel like you're trapped or you can't recover from
Absolutely.
this, or there's some mystery to the whole process.
Absolutely. And transfer students tend to be the happier students because they've been somewhere and not had the best experience. And so when they land somewhere else, then it's a better fit for them. And I think they learn so much through it. You learn just as much from, things that didn't go well as you do from things that went well.